Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Chamber Connection podcast. I'm here with my most awesome podcast host, Steve from Parkland Chamber. So, we wanted to sit and settle and talk about all the things we learned at the CCEC conference and at the Canadian Chamber AGM. It was a crazy week of knowledge and connections and all things chamber. So, let's dig into it. Steve, did you have a good week?
I had a great week. It
Yeah.
was it was fantastic. Uh, the people are always the best part. The sessions and topics were very informative, and I came back with so many notes. But wow, what a venue! Like Halifax, amazing city. Haven't been there before, so got to take in a lot of that area, and yeah, it was yeah, start to finish, just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is. I've been to
How about for
Halifax
you?
before, not for a long time, but loved it. Good restaurants. It's such a
Yeah,
great way to showcase the city. And the Halifax Chamber did an amazing job of showing some great East Coast hospitality. Our party at Alexander Keith's was one of the best. I might have danced a little.
maybe a
Uh,
little bit. Yeah.
Along with a few other people, but just a great example of how connected of a community we all are, that we can, come from a crazy policy resolution debate and kind of put our pens down and still have a lot of fun together.
Exactly, because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure maybe in the same boat. But there's a lot of people that might be in this, but also for those that have never been to CCC, but the sessions and the networking and stuff during the day is very valuable, and you get so much out of it. But it's also those extra things that are attached to the agenda, like you said, Alexander Keith's, that reception and awards at the Cable Wharf. So those evening activities, and then also the free time that you get to, make those, even though starting things off, like going right at the beginning of the agenda, when you get to go to those peer dinners
Hmm.
and everyone, like, you don't get to see everybody off the hop, but you do get to go to a little bit of you get to taste, at the local restaurant. You get to hang out there with a small group and start off on like an easy foot and introductory
Hmm.
with a lot of people. And I guess we kind of started at the hotel home base and then moved from there. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's those extra elements that come along with the program that
Hmm.
I think are just those that create that sense of community. And
Hmm.
definitely for me, this was my, I think, eighth CCEC.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
it's how you establish those connections and
Yeah.
make them last that long. Like there's people that you look forward to seeing every year.
Yeah.
And again, this was another one. It was great to bump into everybody that you've kind of met over the years.
100%. And those dine arounds I do love because I meet people I don't know that I would normally meet. I got and you get to compare notes with how, your chamber versus theirs, and you get little nuggets of information that you can take back to your chamber. And that, a lot of people might not know this, but that's where this podcast was kind of born, was, you and I said, God, we get so much information when we come back from this. How do you convey that to people who can't make it to conference? How do you convey that to new people? How do you make it something that you can transact in your chamber right away? And we came up with this model. So we got some good feedback from the podcast too. So big special shout out to the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce
Yeah.
and for their help in our marketing efforts, because they gave us a little bursary to get some postcards and some most awesome stickers,
Yeah.
which will
Very,
never leave your computer.
no, very permanent stickers. So if anybody's holding on to one of those, uh, be mindful of where you put them.
Yeah.
And then if you've already put it somewhere, well, that's just where you put it, and that whatever it's holding it together, it's going to hold that together. They're very good stickers.
So what I would say, so this is my third conference, and I would say, let's focus on CCEC first. So uh it's 2 days of professional development, and it's a wide range of topics, right? So it's everything from how to enact an advocacy campaign within your chamber. We had some great talks on AI and how you can start using that to modernize
Mm.
your chamber. We had a DEI presentation. Lots of other really good stuff. What were your key takeaways from the conference, from the educational part of it?
Yeah, so AI being a big one. I think I've only had a couple days back at home here, but there's a ton of, especially the video production side of things. there's some programs out there that I need to dive into and understand a lot better because I think um, from that presentation, just seeing really quick, hopefully eventually easy ways to come up with some content
Hmm.
and also photo like your graphic generating, going through some of those and that that example that was used of Santa rafting down the river carrying presents. Well,
That was awesome.
like amazing. And then you go looking into the detail of it and it's like it's not a perfect picture. Some elements are missing, some things kind of don't make sense. But for the most part, like it's usable and it's captivating. And so you can go and then it's also time saving. So you don't have to go through files and files of pictures and try to figure out what you're looking for. You can just ask AI to do some stuff for you with regards to video or graphic design. So I want to see that a little bit more here and get my team familiar with it so we can come up with some great content. And I think also utilizing ChatGPT a lot better,
Hmm.
where it's turning that into a character or an extension of yourself
Yeah.
and giving it parameters to always stick in. Just cleaning it up. I've always been using it as a search engine kind of a thing, and maybe a lot of people are still using it that way. But the way that it was explained there, it was just a bit of an aha moment. It's like, okay, you can actually make it a person. It can have some personality to it or frame it the way that you want it to, and it'll always stick around that way. And you can just bounce some stuff off of it. So
Yeah, and you know what we should do? So I
yeah,
can't remember. So Rob Hole, who gave that presentation, I can't remember the name of his company, but we'll put it in the show notes.
sure.
Because he has a free consultation on how to use ChatGPT. So I think a lot of chambers could take advantage of it. And my
Mhm.
takeaway from that was the same as yours, was that you can create almost little office your office staff, but in a virtual. So it's not meant to replace your staff, but it's meant to allow them to spend more productive time doing other things and really training the AI component of it to give you questions or answers rather that are really specific to your chamber. So I use it quite a bit already, but I feel like I'm missing a big chunk of it. And it's that kind of technology that's moving so quickly that it's hard to keep up with. But I think it's certainly going to be instrumental to cash strapped chambers like ours that, we're always looking at new ways of adding resource. So I really did love that. I got a lot out of Pete, who gave the coaching presentation on how to coach your staff.
Oh
I
yeah.
know we all have challenges with staff resources, whether we can't pay them enough. I know a lot of chambers I talk to are having a lot of transitions in and out.
Hmm.
So I did get a lot of value out of that. So I appreciated that the conference organizers gave us, some business-based stuff, but also, personal development things that make us better leaders and better executives when we get back to our desk.
And what a presentation. Like that was such a gear shift compared to what we've traditionally seen or what you think a presentation could be, like having essentially just a session between a client and the coach. And we got to be a part of that, which was very interesting. And yeah, something that I don't think, not that I can recall, but something that hasn't really jumped out at me as being something
Mhm.
that's been on CCEC stage before. So that was
Yeah.
a very different way of doing it and kind of sticks with you, right?
Yeah, for sure. And of course, Todd Letts, right? Who can forget?
Yeah.
So, a favorite guest on the pod.
Mhm.
And so Todd was the keynote close, and we're lucky he had already given us that little sneak peek on the podcast as to the future of chambers.
Yeah.
Um, but he really dug deep, and I think his presentation was almost 2 hours. We'll have to have him on again. And if you haven't heard, listened to his pod, if you're listening now, please go back and do that. But he talked about the demographic shifts that are changing, primarily that, as boomers and Gen X's kind of, age themselves out, we're looking at Gen Z and Gen Y as our the bulk of our clients and of our members, and they just need to be communicated to differently. But more importantly, their values are different. And so we talked a lot about that, which I thought was really interesting, because it's going to be a shift within our chambers on where we're putting resources and kind of reestablishing who is on our board so that that generation sees themselves in the chamber and sees a reason to join.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then just kind of going back to our, um, I'm going to go out on my limb here, the Hoova app.
Oh, I
No
think it's
one knows
cool that.
exactly how to say it. It's the the Worcestershire sauce of apps out there. So I posed a question in there, and a lot of asking people what are their big takeaways. So Brenda, she mentioned that we are not advocates for our members, we are advocates for our business community, which was, I think, another takeaway for me was just maybe another refresher was like that, we do all this work and yeah, our members influence us and we get our info from, experiences and our board and stuff. But ultimately we're doing work for our business community.
Mm,
It was interesting.
mhm.
She took that one away as well. And seeing a lot of others with regards to advocacy, business supports, collaboration, and there's a few others saying along the lines of that AI was a big one. So Lisa, she's mentioned the session on AI gave her tips and information that we're going to start implementing right away. So I
That's
think
awesome.
that was a big one where it was like those are somewhat easily to implement, right? You can
Yeah.
go back and start. You already kind of have an understanding of it, and you can just start putting it into action.
Yeah. You know what? I remember someone saying to me, advocacy is actually not a benefit of membership, because we're advocating for the whole community. So,
Mhm.
we use that certainly as one of our services, but we don't just advocate for our members. So back to what Brenda said. And I think, when people are listening back to this, well, we're going to add some highlights with some on the spot interviews that we did with people. But community was that overarching theme that came through, and it was the chamber community actually that came through as supportive and that we're stronger together as a federation and the work that we do. Not just, it's funny, it's not just in supporting each other. I just think it's validating each other. We've said this before, it's the loneliest job in the world. It really can be, especially if you're in a small community. There's no one else that does your job. And so it's really lovely to be in a room full of people that get it and understand the joys, but also the not so great days.
Hmm.
So, for the CCE portion or CCEC portion of it, I would say anyone that's on the fence about going, it's a valuable part of your budget if you can make it work.
Definitely. And we're coming to your backyard next year, right? We're going to Mississauga.
Mississauga, woo!
Come check it out. Yeah, it's I feel like even going back to thinking about my first time at CCEC, the value I got out of that conference was so many times more than the initial investment.
Mhm.
The understanding a bit more of the resources that CCEC has available to you, the connections you make, and then the stuff that you can implement. The timing worked out really well that I had some stuff I had to build for membership at that time, and just I made more in sponsorships like right out of the gate. So it helps. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how Mississauga works out next year. And do we see a lot more first timers and maybe
Mm,
some of those first timers that aren't first timers anymore and get them to come back sort of thing.
yeah.
So yeah.
And to what your point you just said, sometimes you got to spend a little money to make some money. And you come back with ideas and maybe things that you didn't even know about that you could monetize. So definitely, if you are an executive that feels like you need some testimonials to get your board to approve that, reach out. We will help. We'll
Mhm.
come and present to your board meeting. But
Yeah,
the
great
professional
idea.
development is bar none. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if anybody's out there on the fence about it or don't think that they can make it or trying to justify it, yeah, reach out to someone in the network. Reach out to CCC, ask Deneen or us or whoever you think might be has that experience and we'll put you with someone that might or we can come up with it on our own or it's a very, very worthwhile
Yeah.
event. And also on oh I lost it. No. Anyways.
Well, just hang tight because it looks like there's a fire brigade going in my office right now. We don't normally get every fire truck in Halton Hills going by it, but it seems we're just waiting for a helicopter and then we're set.
If you were gonna say it, I was. Yeah, we have a inside helicopter joke that was
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Um, so
So
do you want to move on to the Canadian Chamber portion for those
yeah,
that didn't stay?
exactly. So I really appreciated that. I unfortunately missed one of the first meetings of the Pan Canadian Chamber discussion there, but getting into that room at the Canadian Chamber and listening to everyone speak about they posed a couple questions, and it's like ultimately, how does that network look if we were to kind of change everything or what have you? And it was
Yeah.
interesting to hear so many commonalities
Mm.
amongst everyone. We were so spread out. We were all in small groups and talking amongst each other in our small tables. But yeah, like people, there was a common there was something that resonated with everyone. And then also to just the different ideas that all came about, which uh, we had this conversation, Melanie, but nobody knows this. But we're gonna that's just fuel for what we're gonna do going forward for this podcast. Is
Oh
there's
yeah.
a lot of conversations to be had, so we have to
Mhm.
continue that one for sure.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to hear from some other folks that were in that meeting, maybe what were their perspectives or what were
Sure.
their takeaways. Even the Canadian Chamber, where are they going
Yeah.
with it?
Yeah, Ian was writing furiously. Let me give some context for those that don't know what the Pan Canadian is because it's fairly new. So last year, the Canadian Chamber restructured and they went from a 48 or a 52 person board where they had representation from certain regional chambers and local chambers down to, I think they're a 14 or 15 person board. But part of that is, they wanted to maintain their connection with the chamber community to make sure the Canadian Chamber was delivering on things that the smaller chambers can't necessarily. So Candice Lang, who's the new president and CEO, and Ian Ferris reached out and they had all the chamber executives that were present in a room. And like you said, we were all in small little groups just talking about, what's our wish list? If we could, get three or four things out of this, what would it be? And I would say the overarching theme was we wanted a more unified voice in the chamber network, and the Canadian Chamber can certainly help us with that. So, especially if you're a small chamber, it's really hard to communicate to your local community the value that being part of this chamber network carries. That it's more than networking, it's more than parties, it's more than parades. It's about really being there for business in good times and in bad, and having the foresight to know, what's coming down the pike for us and being able to help our business communities in that. So I feel like that was the big theme that came out, that we need some radio ads or TV ads that talk about what a chamber is and what they can do for you. So I loved that. That was awesome.
And yeah, really good.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I know at our table we had talked
Mhm.
a lot too about support for some chambers just in how to do that advocacy. So for example, if we know productivity is a big issue in Canada right now, we're I think second last in the world or something like that. How do we as local chambers take that information and then help our members with it? So if we're
Yeah.
advocating to council or to our provincial counterparts, what kind of talking points can we draw out of like the business development lab or the really smart people that work at the Canadian Chamber? Like, gosh, that economic impact forum was so amazing. I always come back smarter until I forget it all, and then I have to check my notes. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you like that kind of stuff, there's some really smart, important people that are on that stage. They predicted that there'd be a rate cut today of 0.5. So, some good news about the economy. But I really love that part of it because I'm never going to get access to that stuff on a regular basis.
Right. And then trying to translate that a little bit for some smaller chambers, like we're a small chamber. We're in incredible rural Manitoba out here, and it's like, what does that information mean to us? Like it's so sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's not you can't digest it very well, and it's you're talking about big centers, Toronto, Vancouver, stuff like that, and what does it matter? But if you can kind of again talk speaking to those chambers that haven't been or don't see the value in this or whatever, but it's like, yeah, what does it mean for here? Like there's a ripple effect, there's repercussions to things that happen um to on the coasts or in the major centers. There it's going to affect us out here in some way. So it's how do you be prepared for it if it's something
Mhm.
that's about to come, or how do you inform your members or create programming that supports what they're dealing with on a whatever scale compared to what's going on out there. So yeah, it might not be sometimes a direct correlation or a topic that's hitting close to home, but it does play a factor for sure. And
Mhm.
it's how do you how do you make it relate? How do you deal with it back at home once you get back to your chamber?
Well, and I think you and I were talking to a new executive director, and she was like, "Why would I go to the policy debates?" We won't name her, but and I remember saying to her, like, "Oh my gosh, you are going to walk out of there feeling that you are part of something so much bigger than yourself, and you'll be really proud of that." Um, Policy resolutions and debates aren't for everyone, certainly there was some spice in the room and some things do get a little exciting. And some of it can be pretty dry, but what's interesting is that those policies that are formulated at the local chamber level then go up through the provincial caucuses and then to the Canadian chamber to be accepted. That's what drives the messaging that the Canadian chamber brings on our behalf to the federal government. And so we definitely any policy or advocacy wins come out of that forum. And what I loved and do every year is to see all of the themes that unify us across the country, taxation, monetary policy, environment. But then there's some super hyper local things that are really important to people, out west or out east. And to see how everyone mostly works together to make that happen is great. And what I get from it is that you can see kind of down the road as to what things are important in this country. We're so focused on what's going on in our community that we forget sometimes.
Yeah. And some very low-hanging fruit when it comes to marketing or talking about the network. So you can come back home and you can say, hey, the network did this.
Yeah.
Hey, we voted on policies like this, and this is the outcome that happened. And you can do some pre-work. You can see that policy book go out beforehand, and you can go and talk to your members that it directly affects and get their insight
Good
and understand
idea.
how to vote. But then after the fact, you can say, hey, this is what was dealt with at a national level. We were a part of it. We did our part. This is how it played out.
Hmm.
And then hopefully you can kind of keep track of that. You can build more policies off of it, or at least you could just tell your membership, like, hey, this is the work that we're doing, and this
Yeah.
is why you have to invest in the chamber, because if you don't, things like this can kind of get missed or don't get supported. So,
I love that marketing idea. That is great though, because, we do have to tell our story. And so you might not be able to formulate, your own policy at your chamber. You can piggyback on the rest.
right.
I love that idea of taking the policy book, kind of figuring it out, who in there might be impacted by those policies, and directly talking to your members about what their views are on that. That's a great idea, just to be able to interact with your members. So you do that right now?
No, it's just a
No,
great
you do
idea.
it with your board though, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, stealing from another chamber, but like how they typically handle policies, they will divide it up amongst their board members and say, okay,
Oh,
you look after these policies, let me know how it goes. You deal with these, let us know how it's. Then you can kind of, if you got enough time, you can kind of collaborate on them, have discussions. Um, but at least it gets your board involved a little bit too in
yeah.
understanding what the network does. And as a team, you kind of get to collaborate and work on that book. And then, but then there's others, you can develop your own policy advocacy committee or whatever task force you want to come up with. And maybe
Mm.
it's board members, maybe it's not. But however, you got to get your influence to figure out what your votes are. But um, anybody out there too thinking that hasn't been a part of this process or whatever, but I would imagine that your provincial chamber already has this sorted out as well. So then there could be, your provincial chamber meetings that happen, or you can just talk to your provincial chamber and reach out to them and find out what they're going to be doing or have some guidance on it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And the Canadian Chamber throws some really fun parties too. So it's
there you
not all
go.
policy wonk and boring stuff. Well, it's not boring anyway, but yeah, great party at the Cable Wharf. And I want to give a special shout out to our colleagues that won awards
Okay.
at the awards night. So, for those that don't know, you can nominate your fellow chamber executives and or staff members, which is what I love. So there's a staff person of the year, and then there's small, medium, and large size chamber executives of the year. And so keep an eye on your email. So Deneen from CCEC usually sends that out. I don't even know when she sends it out, but it's the look on those people's faces when they won, like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, how
And the
great,
room
right?
erupts. Like it's just, yeah, the excitement that comes along with those, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Acacia also got engaged, so she had a big week.
Things happened this week. That was quite the AGM and conference.
So I feel like we should leave it there because I know we want to share some of the awesome we should call them the ambush videos that we did in the
Something like it's not
hallway.
bad. It's kind of the approach we took with it, but yeah,
Yeah,
we've got some really great quotes from some people and some insights as to what their big takeaways are and what they're getting out of this conference and especially at the CCEC level.
yeah,
And yeah, we're gonna share that some way somehow with everybody, pack it onto this.
perfect.
And yeah, looking forward to much more. And then yeah, the stuff coming out of CCEC and Canadian Chamber, then us here at the podcast, just ramping up, following all of that great information. There's the momentum is going to
Oh,
be over the next little while.
and literally the smartest people that you'll ever meet, and the nicest. It's crazy, the
Yeah.
very sweetest. So yeah, so if you're on the fence, come to Mississauga next year. And if you were here last year, drop some notes down in the comments about what you took away from the conference, and maybe what you want to see us cover on the pod.
Hmm.
All right.
Definitely. I like it.
Well, I guess
Oh,
that's us for today.
yeah, exactly. No special third guest, no fourth guest, no fifth guest, but just
Yeah,
Melanie and Steve.
Melanie and
And
Steve.
yeah, but
Yeah,
the next we're gonna have some really good discussions with some really bright people.
yeah. Very good. Okay, well, great to see you. I'll see you in Mississauga.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Everybody
well,
else.
that's been this episode of the Chamber Connection. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And again, little shout out. I'll do selfish. Little shout out to Manitoba again. Thank you so much to that chamber for helping us out at the conference with our stuff. But thanks all.
100%.